So, like, that's something I've off for myself. The concept of finding something that's I can't explain is almost a challenge.
So, like, Faramir's curse comes to pass. Like, we're human beings, they can't do the same things elves and wizards do. They do have some powers.
That a character's morality affects magic in some degree.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Definitely.
That, like, we're back.
From mountains high to dungeons deep, there's a lot of Tolkien lore to keep. Heroes bold and villains vile, going through it all's gonna take a while. By land or trees or even stars, we're gonna shed some light in this time of ours.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We've been over the hill, under the hill, back again to the library at Undertower. Welcome back. Glad you're here. I'm Tucker Morin, one of the hosts, and my usual co-host, Ethan, is unable to make it this week, sadly. But never fear, my brother Clark has agreed to step in.
Hello, I am Clark. I am his brother. I guess I should give some introduction to myself on my perspective of Tolkien.
That'd be good.
I guess I would have to describe myself more of a casual fan of it. I do love the stories, actually. The characters are really nice, and I've always said that the world of Tolkien is the most well put together world that has ever been made in fantasy, in all fiction entirely. But unfortunately, I've never actually read more than the first book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit. And it wasn't the best reading experience for me because I just don't like Tolkien's writing style. I could never get into it because of that. But I know I do love the stories, I do love the world, and I know maybe more than your average. I don't know. Sorry, I forgot the word for it. Your average fan, due to the proximity to Tolkien aficionados like him.
Yes. It's just, since we have lived together so long, he is, I talk, and he has to listen, because he's there. And so he knows a little bit more than just...
I have a lot of secondhand knowledge.
Yeah,
due to
he knows a bit. I tried not to go too crazy on him to, make it a little easier to digest and talk with me. You can go a lot. You can talk quite a bit about Tolkien if you want to. So Clark knows a little more than just, he's seen the movies. He knows a little bit more than that kind of stuff. But still, not total novice, but more of a casual enjoyer. Mm-hmm. And so now we have here today, we got the lore master, the casual enjoyer. And we're going to talk today here at the library today we're actually talking about magic. So last week we talked about the rings of power and how they were made. And those are magical artifacts made with lots of elven magic, with some help from Sauron, incorporating some of the magic. And so this week we're going to go a little more into magic itself, with the nature of magic and a few examples, some of the greater magical feats that have happened. And the magic is actually one of the most unique parts of Tolkien and his works. That a lot of people have either taken inspiration from or copied Tolkien over the years. Like, once Tolkien released his books,
his books are the foundation for the modern fantasy genre. Yes. Every time there's some book with elves, dwarves, and magic, it has its roots down to Tolkien, because he literally invented all of that.
Yes, the way that dwarves and elves stuff that existed before, but he invented it the way we know it today. And it's like so many people have used that like Tolkien style fantasy has become generic and kind of overdone. But there are a few things that nobody has been able to capture. And one of them is the magic. Uh-huh. When you get into Tolkien's world, there are some things that, there is a depth to it that is not often seen elsewhere, and the magic is one of those things. Uh-huh. That's because there are some things in Tolkien's writing that are just really hard to mimic. They're really hard to pull off unless you are able to write excuse me, in the same, like, unless you can pull off the same kind of writing and the same, like, depth of world and interconnectedness, it's hard to make certain aspects of his world work, which not a lot of authors do.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is like his world is built around the world is built around the themes the story is also built around. So everything pulls together very nicely, very neatly, like almost perfectly in some places. And the magic is one of those things. It's just a part of everything. It's not tacked on. It's not used as a story plot. It's just there.
And so if you don't have the same kind of themes that Tolkien's working with, it's also hard to pull off his type of magic. Because his magic, it's tied to the individual. It is part of the light and the glory within each individual, and the more light and more glory an individual has, the more like magical stuff they can do. You know, the like common thing referenced is Sam was talking to Galadriel in Lothlorien, and he asked her if she'll do some elven magic, and she says to him, "I don't know what you mean exactly. I've heard this term magic, but to us, this is just, it's natural. The elves just do this." And so it's hard for her to understand exactly what he means by elven magic. And she lets him and Sam and Frodo look into her mirror and see their visions. And she asks him, like, so he says, like, "Is this what you were hoping for? Is this the elven magic you wanted, Samwise?" And he's like, "Yes, I think it was." So, which therefore makes magic very hard to like quantify.
If I'm aware, reminding myself, the term magic is very rarely said in the books, is it?
Yes.
Like, is it said is it from like the Tolkien aficionado here? Is it said more than that moment where Sam is wondering about elven magic?
It is also talked about when hobbits are talking about Gandalf.
So it's just the hobbits talking about everyone else having
power. Pretty much the only time that magic, like the word magic, is used is when the hobbits are talking about other beings like elves and wizards talking about it, because that's what it's magic to the people doing magic in Tolkien's world. It doesn't come across to them as magic. It only appears like magic to other beings watching them do crazy things, incredible things. They're like, "Wow, that was magical."
Yeah. If I'm correct, reminding me, then magic is like a kind of a who you are. Like, you are powerful, you are magical, so therefore you can do things with your innate powerful powers.
Yes.
Because magic is just like tied to the world itself. How do you say that?
No, I think that's good. They're saying it's tied to the world itself, tied to like reality, tied to the world itself and to the individual. There's a little section here I want to read that might help to move this along. Let's see. Yes. For which reason the Valar are to these kindreds rather than elders, and their chieftains than masters. And if ever, in their dealings with elves and men, the Ainur have endeavored to force them when they would not be guided, seldom has this turned to good, howsoever good the intent. The dealings of the Ainur have indeed been most through the elves, for Iluvatar made them more like in nature to the Ainur, though less in might and stature, whereas to men he gave strange gifts. For it is said that after the departure of the Valar, there was silence, and for an age Iluvatar sat alone in thought. Then he spoke and said, "Behold, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi and the Atani. The Quendi are the elves, the Atani are the men. But the Quendi shall be the fairest of all earthly creatures, and they shall have and shall conceive, and bring forth more beauty than all my children, and they shall have the greater bliss in this world. But to the Atani I give a new gift. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world, and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else." So with that, we see that there are like there are tiers of beings, and that the different tiers, they have different levels of beauty and bliss, which is if you read more of the works, is innately tied to the like light. So it is literally like the elves are built different. Like it's not just some cringy phrase to make yourself feel better this time. Like the elves are literally built different.
They're fundamentally more powerful creatures
Yes.
than other creatures.
Yes, yes. Because they are tied to the world, and they are made more in the image of the Valar, who are a higher tier being. And the Valar were made off of the thought of Ilúvatar. So the elves are closer to being like Ilúvatar.
Which are sort of like the gods in this.
Ilúvatar is the god.
Got
The
it.
Valar are god-like, like
God-like
angelic-like
beings.
beings that are like that kind of like that. They're like stewards of the world, and the elves are the closest to them. So the elves have the greater glory, they have the greater beauty and bliss, and they are tied to the world.
So in a way, you could say that the elves are kind of all demigods.
They would be like demigods.
Okay,
They're
I'm getting this.
yeah, they're like a few rungs down, but
takes down.
yes,
So would the demigod, the not quite as many demigods, be like the wizards?
yes,
Got it.
yes. So you could say that, even though I want to put a little caveat there, like the way people normally think of demigods would not quite apply. All right, it's very Tolkien. A lot of stuff is very much unique to him.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's like using the term like demigod, like it can be useful to help us understand like the tiers going on, but it's not exactly like that. Like the Valar are their own thing. Eldar, like they're made more like the Valar, so they're kind of like a demi to that, and the Valar are like a demi Ilúvatar kind of. So it's hard to exactly put into words, but so like that can be helpful, but it's not a one-to-one translation.
Kind of why I like talking about this stuff with you. Like the setting is very unique.
It's super. Yes.
It takes a while to wrap your brain around it, but once you do,
It
you're
does.
like, wow.
It does actually. Once you really get into it, it can take some time to really grasp it all. And like I said before, like it's been copied so much that it's kind of Tolkien's style of world has kind of like become generic. But once you actually like go into Tolkien's world specifically,
It's not generic at
yeah,
all.
there's a lot of deeper stuff that is very much just a Tolkien thing.
I mean, even like compare something with the magic here. Like most fantasy settings, when they have wizards, it's like a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go to college, you learn magic, and you learn hand signs and incantations, and those allow you to change the world around you to have your effects. While as Tolkien's world instead, you kind of have to be born with magical power most of the time to be able to have your abilities. And then people don't, they don't think of it as like, I use my hand signs, say some chanty words, and now magic happens. They instead just do stuff. And magically it happens. Like, wasn't like, remember, who was Aragorn's forefathers? One of them who cursed the guys who became ghosts.
Elendil.
Yeah.
Was it Isildur? It was one of those
One of
two.
those guys.
I'll look it up. Yes, in the Lord of the Rings movies, remember the ghost soldiers, the hill people, where they had sworn to fight alongside Gondor, but then at the last minute they betrayed him and they ran away and hid in the mountains. And Isildur curses them, and that curse happens. Like, you think here, like Isildur, who's Isildur? Like he's a man. He's a great king, but he's just a man.
He is a human being, not an elf.
He's not an elf. He's not a wizard. He's a human being. But because of his innate greatness and glory within himself, he was able to put a curse on the hill people. And in Lord of the Rings books, then Faramir does a very similar thing to Gollum, where Faramir, when reading the books, Faramir came across to me like a demi-wizard. Like, that guy was intense. And he won several battles of will. Like Sam says, you could feel like a struggle of wills going on. Faramir always won. and he puts a curse on Gollum, and it comes to pass. Like Gollum's death in Mount Doom was a fulfillment of Faramir's curse.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, Gollum's dying. Like Faramir curses him. I can't remember the exact word. Like he curses him that if he does any harm to Frodo or Sam, that he will soon meet a painful demise. Something like that.
And falling into
And
a
he
vat of
fell
lava
into-
definitely
he fell
qualifies as a
into
painful death.
Yeah, he betrayed Frodo and Sam and fell into a volcano. So like Faramir's curse comes to pass. Like we're human beings, they can't do the same things elves, wizards do. They do have some powers.
Oh, actually, on this note, I think there's a conversation we had a while ago. Isn't there like different tiers within some species in the Indian race? Like there are different tiers of humans as well.
Oh, that. Yes. That's another interesting. Why not? So that's
If we're talking about the nature of magic and tiers of people and how that's your power, you have to talk about this.
Interesting. Okay, so that also comes from Faramir in the books, and he talks about how there are like the men of the day, the men of the noon, and the men of the evening, and that like his ancestors when they first came, they were the men of the morning. They were the men of the morning. They were great, and like the people of Rohan, they're more like the men of noon. You know, like they're still great, but like he gives an example. Like the men of Rohan, they believed that war had glory in and of itself. They were a very much more war for itself. They believed that, and whereas Gondor did not. And Gondor was described as being like a slightly higher tier, and then there's like the forest people that help Rohan. They're even lower down. Well, actually, I think the Easterlings came first, then those guys. Anyway, it's been a while since I've read that part.
We're getting into the really obscure.
Yeah, we're getting into like some
pieces.
much more obscure things that is like said once in the books, and it's like interesting. So yes, like there are tiers. Even the men, they're those tiers of men, and like so Faramir and Isildur were able to do these things partly because, at least in part, because they're in a higher tier of men, and so this higher tier of humans, they can put curses, they can win battles of will, they can do these things that appear magical to those who are of a lower tier of men. And again, like Faramir didn't think he wasn't like putting a spell. He didn't cast magic to curse Gollum. He was being himself. He had that in him, and he knew it, and he just spoke, and it happened because he could. Which is what happens a lot with magic. But that's not to say there aren't spells, which is interesting, just to make it more convoluted for you.
We didn't need enough of that already.
Didn't need enough of that already, talking about magic and Tolkien. That there are actually some references of spells. And these spells, it's interesting how much of Tolkien's magic is like language-based or inspired. At least how a lot of the execution of it. Yes, so there are references to spells. And with that, we're going to talk about a different character and go into some greater feats of magic, and that is Luthien. Now, Luthien actually does quite a few crazy awesome feats of magic.
Before we continue, could you remind me who Luthien was? I kind of lost him in the
Luthien
sea
is
of
actually
characters.
she.
Oh, right.
Luthien is an elvish princess. She is the daughter of Thingol and Melian.
I remember Thingol, yeah.
Yes, Thingol, he is a king, elvish king, and Melian is actually a Maiar on the same tier that Gandalf and Saruman are.
Because Gandalf is even higher tier than the elves.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. We'll go in a little bit more about Gandalf.
Just
But
clarifying
yes,
that for
yes,
the moment.
yes. So Melian is a higher tier than Thingol even. And so she, somewhat inexplicably, it's never quite explained, she agrees to be his wife. Somehow he pulled that one off. And so Thingol marries a Maiar on the similar tier as Gandalf, and their daughter is Luthien. And this is talked about a lot more in the Lay of Beren and Luthien, which is, even Tolkien talked about it as like the most important story within his mythology. Like he loved this story. It was super important to him. It was important to his own process of developing things. It's a really important story. It might be the longest, or it's the second longest But yes, in that story, then there are several incredibly powerful feats of magic that are done. Most of them are done by Luthien, who actually, she's an elvish princess who spent most of her life, dancing in the woods while her brother played music for her.
As elves do.
As elves do. The elves do that all the time. And but she goes on the quest with Beren to help him, and she does lots of crazy feats of magic. And to start off, her father tries to stop her from going to follow Beren, and he tries to lock her in a tower. And she gets out by, and it's described as she casts a spell that makes her hair grow super long, and she climbs down on this rope of her hair. And then
Reverse Rapunzel.
Reverse Rapunzel. And then she takes that hair and with another spell turns it into a magic cloak. This cloak makes her like practically invisible, and she puts a powerful, it even says a spell of sleep. It's a very powerful spell of sleep. Like she will knock unconscious several beings throughout the quest, and the only being she does not just one shot knock out unconscious is Morgoth himself. So,
didn't she actually end up putting him to sleep though?
Yes.
We'll get there. Sorry
to
to get too ahead of things.
We're going to talk about. Yes, she does. So she actually. So with her cloak, with a few adventures, she finds out that Beren has been kidnapped by Sauron, and Beren is about to be eaten by a werewolf in Sauron's basement, until Luthien, with her magic hunting dog, shows up. And she bangs on the door of Sauron's castle and demands her boyfriend back. And so Sauron comes out in werewolf form, and the magic hound Huon, he defeats werewolf Sauron. And then Luthien gets a magic password from Sauron and destroys his entire fortress. Sauron's entire castle just comes crumbling down. There's nothing left standing.
That was with the magic password?
Yeah. She gets a magic pass. She gets like a magic word, because Sauron used his magic to build the fortress. Oh. So she gets the magic words
and then just undoes
from Sauron and undoes Sauron's magic. Ooh. And his whole castle goes crumbling down. And then she uses her magic to make a disguise for her and Beren, so that Beren looks like a werewolf, she looks like a bat. And they run up to the gates of Angband, where they meet the most powerful werewolf to ever exist. And this werewolf is kind of skeptical of them, so Luthien knocks it unconscious. Just right there on the doorstep. Knocks it unconscious. And they go inside. And then she is went inside. Then her cloak wasn't strong enough there. What she does is she starts dancing and singing in Morgoth's court. And she pretends to want to offer herself as a servant to Morgoth, and she dances in for him and sings for him, and she ends up knocking the entire room out cold. They're all unconscious. Morgoth slumps and falls flat in his face, unconscious in front of his throne. And then they take one of the Silmarils, and they escape. There's a lot more to that. I'm kind of summarizing so we can talk about more stuff.
I mean, it's still pretty
yes,
wild, to be honest.
Luthien knocked out the devil himself with magic, and it's described as putting a spell or an enchantment. So spells do exist. But even then, with that said, those using these spells, the elves still don't see it as oh, she cast magic. The spell is something she could innately do.
I know, Gandalf. I read the first book, so Gandalf does mention casting a spell at one point when they're running away from the Balrog. He casts a spell on the door to try to keep it locked.
Yes.
And then the Balrog counters it. I can't remember. I think it exploded at the end of that.
It did, yes. So Gandalf, while they're in Moria and they're running away in the book, then Gandalf stays behind to lock the door behind them so the orcs can't follow them down the tunnel that they went down. And he casts a powerful spell of locking on the door. But the Balrog shows up right then. The Balrog counters the spell to open. Gandalf says he had never felt such a counter blow in his life. But he counters the counter spell to try and command the door to close. and the door just explodes. Like the magical strain on the door just straight blows up. Gandalf gets flung back down the hallway, and the whole entryway just caves in that blocks the door, blocks the path behind him.
Whoa.
So there was so much magic pouring into this one area that it just blew up.
I was remembering the scene, back to the spells, that when Gandalf put that on there, he was telling everyone else because he'd just been blown back and
Yes.
was recounting the events to them.
Yes.
Remember, if I remember correctly, he said, like, I cast the locking spell, and I know many of them, so I put my most powerful spell on it.
Yes.
It's an interesting thought there. It's like, again, like magic is innate. This is his natural power. He was thrown onto the world in human form with this power, but he has a couple of memorized magical abilities he can do. Maybe.
Well, yes, that comes to the magic and its connection to like language and like magical things happening with words. Like even opening the door to get to Moria, you have to speak friend and enter. That's a more simple version, but like then Gandalf's spell he put on the door that blew it up. But but like
They were both doors.
yes, it was like, so. I mean, it makes sense. Tolkien was a philologist who loved language, And if you think about, like, with magic being, like, innate and, like, the glory and the beauty within somebody, then, like, for us, if we're trying to pursue our own light and our own virtue, like, how important is a language to that? Like, we use language... Language is a bunch of metaphors that we use to help us understand and visualize the world around us. So that because like everything has a meaning inherent in itself, but without the language, then it's not it's not as useful. And so if you think about that, then like magic being tied to language. Like it still like it. Anyway, it still connects. It all still works with the inherent virtue. And if you want to use that virtue in the world, you need to say the right words.
You just hit on a topic I have been a nerd about since I was like 6, which is language itself. Just like honestly, I just found the concept of like a written language and a spoken language fascinating since I was able to even begin trying to read. Like, just think about it. The idea that, like for the English language, you have a collection of symbols. They look kind of weird by their own, but we memorize them. Each one has a sound attached to it. You put those sounds in a certain string, certain collections together, another collection separate. And that collection is a thought, or a way to connect thoughts. And then we string those thoughts and those connections together, and we can make a very complicated thought. Something that you could not be able to express in simple grunts or gestures or non-language communications. I mean, to be honest, there is also an argument to be made about art, that's ability to express thoughts and ideas, but it's very hard, but that's also very, how do you say, kind of general, almost vague. It's hard to get something very specific.
Yes,
but for
that's
language, you can say a very deep, very profound, very specific thought.
And even with the art, people they take the art, and people try to take the meaning of the art and to
Express it,
to put words to it. Yeah. Like it is also has been said and I recommend it to just enjoy a piece of art. That is a legitimate thing to do, but it's also a good thing and it's a perfectly fine thing to try to talk about it. To look into the art, see what it means to you,
Like as something of an author myself, maybe I should mention it or not, but like,
go ahead.
I have written a couple of books. You can find them on Amazon. So like, as something of an author myself, the concept of finding something that's I can't explain is almost a challenge. To want to find a way to explain it in a way that even if I can't quite say exactly what the thought is, I can make you think the exact same thought. But still, that's a super powerful thing language has.
Yep.
And it only works because we all collectively agree what these sounds and phrases and symbols mean.
And Tolkien from things Tolkien has said about his love language and from his books, it's fair to say that Tolkien would say that those words you choose to use matter, that they make a difference. Which brings with that, let's go now. I want to talk about, back to Gandalf and his Balrog, fighting the Balrog in this. Where'd it go? Sorry, is it back here? Yeah, it's this one. All right. So, we're going to read a little bit about Gandalf dueling the Balrog and the words that are used, and to show maybe there were spells cast, I don't know, but this
We're gonna give ourselves an idea.
we're giving ourselves an idea that that this is Gandalf's magic duel with the Balrog, and how important words are here. We're gonna go through it. We're gonna talk about it, and then I'll mention another duel that happened. Anyway, so here the Balrog reached the bridge. Gandalf stood in the middle of the span, leaning on the staff in his left hand, but in his other hand glamoring gleam, cold and white. His enemy halted again, facing him, and the shadow about it reached out like two vast wings. It raised the whip, and the thongs whined and cracked. Fire came from his nostrils, but Gandalf stood firm. "You cannot pass," he said. The orc stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." The Balrog made no answer. The fire in it seemed to die, but the darkness grew. It stepped forward slowly on to the bridge, and suddenly it drew itself up to a great height, and its wings were spread from wall to wall. But still Gandalf could be seen, glimmering in the gloom. He seemed small and altogether alone, grey and bent, like a wizened tree before the onset of a storm. Let's pause there for a second. So we see here, first, the thing to notice here, I think, was start with the Balrog. It steps up with fire. There's a fire whip and fire in his nostrils, and its smoke is stretching out. And then Gandalf says he's a servant of the secret flame, wielder of the flame of Anor, and the dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. So this is the first part of Gandalf's duel with the Balrog. And in this part, Gandalf outfires the Balrog.
It almost sounds like he's like that's like, again, the thought of like words being part of this magic, that like he specifically brings up the fire.
Yes.
He says, "I am fire, you are fire, my fire is better than your fire."
Yep, it is. We'll get back to the words that Gandalf, like again, aside from the words, Gandalf does have better fire than the Balrog does, but he still had to say it. Like the word choice was still important, and then that. But then after he says that, after he says that, you see that like the fire dims in the Balrog. That Gandalf beat the Balrog's fire.
When he said, "My fire is better than your fire," he was right.
He was right, and the Balrog's fire dims down. But the darkness goes up. He says, "Go back to the shadow." That things of evil are always connected with shadows and darkness, and good things are connected with light. That like things of shadow aren't always less powerful than things of light. But the things of shadow, they're always something that was light that was corrupted. And then Gandalf, you see, he's shining. That Tolkien has lots of dualities, and one of them is the darkness versus light. And so the Balrog, Gandalf beat the fire. The fire's gone, so the Balrog turns to darkness. He turns to the shadow. He goes back to the shadow. And that's when the next half of the duel comes on. From out of the shadow a red sword leapt flaming. Glamoring glittered white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and its sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then again stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bound, the Balrog leapt full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. Skip that part. At that moment, Gandalf lifted his staff, and crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flame sprang up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, while the rest remained poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and its shadow plunged down and vanished. So the second half was the darkness versus light. And this one didn't have like the sentences per se, but it just had simply Gandalf saying, "You cannot pass." After, and this time, it's like the colors. Like there's the white. Gandalf is always white. There's the white fire of the sword, the white fire blast of flame that he comes out to break the bridge, and the Balrog is always black. And just his statement there, the simple statement, "You cannot pass." That's the wording for the magic this time. And the light beat the darkness, and you cannot pass.
He did not pass.
And he didn't. So, So that is another one of the great feats of magic, I would say. It's difficult to power scale magic because things diminish in Tolkien's world. And so, like, everything I said before with Luthien happened in the first age, and Gandalf's thing happened in the third age.
Like, all my talks with you is, like, the first stage is like, so over-the-top intense.
Pretty much everything about it.
Like, nothing compares on how crazy it is. And then the third age is, like, relatively normal scale. And then every now and then it's like, Balrog!
Yes, exactly. Which is why I put the Balrog in this feats of greatness, because Balrog has been around since the first age. That's why Gandalf says, this is a foe beyond any of you, because the Balrog is a demon from, like, unknown thousands of years ago when the world was still new.
Yeah.
So the Balrog is beyond anything in this world.
It's like the Balrog was like, it was a scary foe back in the day when everyone was able to do more powerful feats than anyone can do at this point in history.
Yes. Like, at the events of Lord of the Rings, there were, like, maybe five beings in the whole world that could have beaten the Balrog, and 4 out of the 5 were elves. Gandalf being one of the other ones. So, like, Balrogs are intense about when they are. So Gandalf beating him in a duel like this, which was primarily a duel of magic. You know, there's a little bit of sword play.
I mean, even that I could say as being magical, because, like, you know, again, we're talking about, like, the duality of light and shadow, and we know from, like, the Balrog's fire being diminished, it's pretty easy to see that's kind of magical effect in some regard as well. So, like, it pulls out its fire sword. We'll assume that's somewhat magical as well.
Yes.
We can assume Gandalf with his sword having some bright white glow to it. There's probably some magic going on there.
Definitely.
And so the two clash, and Gandalf's magic wins.
Yes.
It also describes it looks like a one-time hit. It's not really sword play, more as a one-time big magic blast.
Yes, exactly. That's because Gandalf breaks the Balrog. Sort of like, it was
that's
like
a pretty obvious
clash,
you won.
A clash of magic, and the Balrog's sword loses. This is definitely like you know, like there are other, like, Glorfindel the warrior kills a Balrog in single combat, but Gandalf is a wizard, and so he uses magic. And this duel also goes to the duel here. It also illustrates the nature of magic just being tied up within the world itself. That this is a duel between light and darkness. This is the two fires going against each other. It's the light and the darkness going against each other. And so because of that, like the magic is not super visible. Like you can see the effects. The fire dims, the sword breaks. But a lot of this crazy powerful magic is not entirely in the visible realm because it's all just tied up in the world itself.
Yeah. Like comparatively other magical stuff like Dungeons and Dragons as an example. That the magic in that you get like fireball, huge bursts of fire, shooting lightning bolts, blasts of colors that transport you to another dimension.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff you get in there. It's very visual, it's very open, it's very flashy, it looks really cool. Then you go to Tolkien's world where like the caliber of stuff, it's like that caliber of stuff is still happening, but instead it's like a more metaphysical, my fire versus your fire, and then these magical swords clashing.
Yes.
Watching the shadow creep around the room as his magical influence increases.
Which I think that comes down to like the Dungeons and Dragons style stuff, like a lot of more modern things, a lot of modern magical styles. Comes down to this. They're coming from a more modern starting point of this more modern idea that like the world is full of infinite possibilities of this material realm, and if we can learn to do the right things, we can enact changes in the physical realm. This is a very modern idea that Tolkien did not like very much, actually. Tolkien did not care for this advance of the modern mindset. He thought it was very destructive, that it was destroying the world, it was going to make people slaves to what he called the machine, which I think we'll talk about more in depth in a different episode, because it's a pretty big concept. But
Got it.
that this idea of being able to, like, you learn, like if you learn, like with more modern magic, you learn the right symbols, learn the right steps to do, and you change something. Whereas Tolkien's magic, it's innate. It's just built into the world itself.
Yeah, D&D is example once again, officially in lore, it's supposed to be like, I want to cast the spell, there's a specific hand motion, a specific incantation, and then there's also the magical channeling into it in a specific way. But it's like a science. You know this, you do this and you do this and this happens. While as opposed to Tolkien's world, where it's like, I curse you because that's just something I'm allowed to do.
Yes. It's like,
and like the curse it was given, like the if I remember from this, it's just like, I curse you, Gollum, that if you hurt Sam and Frodo, you will soon meet a very painful death. That's kind of just like a normal curse you might give someone, like, I really hope you die if you hurt this person. Yes. But like, because he's magical, because he has power beyond the scope of normal humans, then it actually just happens because it's just something he's allowed to do. Yes.
And it works with fair also, like, that, like, where's it go? Is that the Faramir, it works because of what he has within himself, that he didn't like learn a science, he just was able to tap more into the way the world was. And you see that with Faramir, where Faramir is one of the wisest people in the books. Like Faramir, we get a lot of dialogue from Faramir where we get to see his character and his understanding of things, and he's a really awesome guy. He's a super intelligent, super wise guy. One of my favorite quotes he gives, where it was like, says, I do not love the sword for its brightness, the arrow for its swiftness, or the warrior for his glory. I have only that which he defends. That, like, this is the kind of awesome stuff Faramir says all the time. Like, so you can see him saying these things to show us his character, and it's like, and then because he's so freaking awesome, he knows so much. He's so great. He can curse people now. Like he wins battles of will. It's more like who you are.
To clarify this, are we saying, or are you saying, you're informing me and everyone else here, that a character's morality affects magic in some degree?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Definitely.
That, like, this is another example with, like, the Balrog kind of thing, like the evil and the corruption.
I mean, Balrog, you described it as like a demon, and it pretty much is. It is like a creation inherently evil.
Yes. Well, actually,
maybe not.
I wouldn't say inherently evil, because Balrogs, they were also Maya, like Gandalf or Sauron, Saruman, who were corrupted. Like, they were not always Balrogs.
Oh.
They became evil because they following Morgoth, who is the Satan of this world.
Right, I forgot.
And
about that.
Morgoth, like, before Morgoth turned evil, then he was the most powerful. Like, he became diminished because of his choices, because his morals, and he deluded himself. That, like, Morgoth still does lots of magic. Sauron is still, like, Sauron was, like, before, like Sauron's magic, he was an unrivaled sorcerer. Like, always. There was never a sorcerer who was more powerful than Sauron, despite him being evil. So, like, the power isn't necessarily related to the light, the magic, like, or the glory, but he started good, but he became evil, which then changed the way his magic came about in the world.
Right. I think I remember an example you brought up to me in a previous conversation we had, that there was some, like, that, like, when, like, it was, I think it was Sauron or Morgoth, one of them, like, what was it? something about the like evil people doing magic. It's like a different way it works. So
Yes.
the example you brought up for me was that like an elf creates a magical sword or a magical artifact, and they just imbue their light into it.
Yes.
And now that light is now also in the sword, but their light hasn't diminished.
Yes.
But if an evil person wanted to make an artifact of evil magic, they would have to imbue their darkness into it, for lack of a better word. But to do that, they'd have to cut off a piece of themselves and put it in. So their power is now diminished because they had to separate a piece to put in this other object.
Correct. And that is because that the intention, the morality / intention matters. That when they like, so one of the greatest feats of magic was the creation of the Silmarils by Fëanor. And so the way that worked is Fëanor, he took a bunch of other like light and great things, and his own greatness. He was the greatest of the elves, and he puts them and like imbues these crystals with it, and these crystals become the greatest, most powerful artifacts in the world. But Fëanor wasn't diminished because he didn't go in the way he went into it was the subcreation that we talked about in the first episode. It's a refraction of light. He was creating. He wasn't trying to dominate or control anything. Whereas like Morgoth, like Sauron making the One Ring, he did that for control. His intention was self-serving. It was domineering. And so, and because the nature of evil is to want that, to want to control, then they put a piece of themselves into things. And so, like I said before, that the morality matters, and that your intentions into something change the way that thing works, which also happens in real life. Like your intentions and your morality, but why you do something, they affect how you go about it, and they affect the way that your actions and the consequences of that are going to play out in the world.
Like that's something that that's something like in the real world that's been noted multiple times, even by like sword fighters. To be honest, I've heard that from those guys that like if you if you want something, you're more likely to do better doing it. But there's also different kinds of wanting something, and someone who wants to do something for, like as a couple of examples, someone wants to do something for the sake of personal glory will be better at it than someone who isn't really invested in it. But he won't be doing as good as someone who wants to do it for the benefit of someone else, or for like general good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're trying to make money to help someone, you might do it better than if you want money because you want a bigger TV.
Yeah. Back to the sword fighting thing, like it's okay to want to win the competition. Okay, like it's okay to want to do good in your sword fighting. Not necessarily wanting it for the like you can want it for like because you love sword fighting, but like
personal improvement is a noble cause.
Yes, or like just because you love it, you want to be better at it. Like that's a perfectly fine motivation. Like again with like Fëanor and his Silmarils, like he didn't do it for anybody else. He did it because he saw all these great beautiful things around him, and he wanted to keep that light. Like he wanted to preserve it. He wanted to add to that light that was around him. Like he just loved the light. He wanted to add to it. So if you love sword fighting, you want to be better at it, that's fine. It's, but wanting to like obsessing about being the best or like getting prideful about it.
Or like being in a competition for it, the difference between wanting to do your best or wanting to see the other person fall.
Right. So like there's this fine line. It's a fine line here, but it's played out so masterfully in the way Tolkien writes his magic and the nature of good versus evil coming out in everything. It's so well put together, and I totally understand why nobody has been able to pull it off or even tried.
In honesty, it's kind of
probably shouldn't try because it's so hard to do.
Like honestly, if for people who are like reading mostly like modern fantasy, then you get to Tolkien. I have a hard time reading the books because of the style of his writing. It's so different than anything else I've ever read. But again, like that very natural, very almost simple, but very deep way it all works of the good versus evil. That's just embedded in everything is refreshing actually, compared to a lot of modern authors who try to get all fancy with the morality. And it can be fun to have, the one character you're kind of not sure about, or the debate is actually about like something like order versus chaos instead of good versus evil. But in the end, you come down to like a good versus evil story where these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and it's embedded in the world. It's a part of the magic. It's part of the setting. It's an irrevocable piece of it, and it's used masterfully. Is refreshing, to be honest.
I agree. I think it's one of the reasons why Tolkien's work is still so beloved. As modern authors try to make everything morally gray, then they convolute things, and then every character ends up being, there's always like, you can't, anyway, so like it can happen where like every character you can't quite get behind.
Yeah, because they tried to make everyone gray just a little bit. They put too much emphasis on the flaws.
Yeah,
it's like, I want to love this guy, but there's that problem. I want to love this guy, but there's that problem. It's like and those faults are just too brought to the surface.
Mm-hmm. And more there's this emphasis on like no objective good and evil. That isn't everywhere, but it is more and more has become a thing over the years. But also, I would say Tolkien has like his like moral nuances, like especially Boromir. Boromir is a fantastically written character. That guy.
Actually, Boromir is my favorite character in the series, both book and movies. He is my personal favorite because of that complexity and the morality to it. Like, he was a good person.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. He was a good soldier, a good fighter, a noble person, a generally decent human being, actually. But he did fall to the ring. And not because of entirely selfish reasons, but because the ring twisted a generally noble cause.
Right.
But he allowed it to become an obsession.
Yes.
And then at the end, he's able to fight against it and pull himself together. And that's why I like him, because he shows up in the first book, goes through this entire crazy story arc, and then redeems himself at the end.
Yes. Like Aragorn in the books, like he is like a quasi-mythical figure. Like he is the king, and he's the king archetype, and he's like has some aspects that are almost like a messianic kind of character a little bit. Anyway, there's not several characters have aspects anyway, but Boromir is the common man. Boromir is like, Aragorn is there to be a king. Boromir is there for all of us.
Yeah.
And his and you can see like his goodness, and like that goodness, his fall to the ring, like you can see it happening from the beginning. Like from his Faramir was supposed to be the one to go to the Council of Elrond, but Boromir insisted he be the one. That there was a quest for him. He had to go. Like Boromir, he wanted so badly to be the hero of Gondor that that destroyed him in the end. It became too much like I said, a good thing. That
like Gondor was corrupted. Wasn't Gondor being attacked by orcs at the time?
Well, they weren't actively being attacked, but like they had been fighting Sauron almost constantly. Like they weren't actively under attack, but like Mordor was stirring, and they'd been attacked very recently. Like Gondor set itself up. Like so, Gondor's ancestors, the Númenóreans, were always at war with Sauron, and then they came to Middle Earth, and they were still at war with Sauron. Like Gondor, from its founding, was the bulwark against Sauron, and so that was like an inherent part of Gondor's identity.
But like with that being said, they're fighting.
Oh yeah,
they're warriors, but again, not because they love to fight, but because they see a moral need to do it.
Yes.
And so for him to want to be a hero, that's not entirely, like, could be seen, I think it is, not as a selfishly, I want to be all cool and be seen as cool, but like, Gondor needed a hero.
They did.
And he was willing and able and wanting to step up to do that.
That's because Gondor, they were weakening. Like it was not like Denethor and Boromir pointing out that like Gondor can't do it. Like they can't beat Mordor this time. That was not wrong. Like Gondor had like everything else diminished. And Sauron being an immortal, the sorcerer Maya, he took his time to build his forces. Like, Gondor was going to lose. And so for Boromir to want to be that hero was a good thing. All right. Before we go, then we'll wrap up, is that I just want to mention another magic duel that happened. This was between an elf king, Finrod, and against Sauron. And this was also the Lay of Beren and Luthien, when Beren first gets kidnapped. He's with Finrod, and Finrod has a magic duel with Sauron. They were disguised as orcs, and Sauron tries to see through their disguise, and Finrod tries to counter it. And it's described as like the greatest magic duel of all time. And Finrod doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, so I want to throw that out there real quick at the end. And look out the Bear of Lay Luthien, because it's all about words in that duel. All right. With that, I think we've said quite a bit about magic. Hopefully, everyone listening got something out of that. You enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for being here with me, Clark. Appreciate you stepping up.
Thanks for having me on. It was more fun than I was expecting.
Oh, good. Good.
And I was expecting it to be fun.
Oh, nice. Yeah. All right. So that's our second episode of the Library at Undertower. Anybody's welcome to join us next week when we come on. We're available on Spotify and YouTube at the moment. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. See you next week.
From mountains high to dungeons.
Hey, we are. I challenge you to a duel with this here guy.
Oh, what did I do?